Yeah.
Huh? What's up?
There you go.
Oh, am I talking?
Yeah.
Like where it should be? It should be in the yellow, but not in the red.
It should be in the yellow, not in the red.
Like it should be all the way up in the yellow, but very up in the red.
Right. That's where it's holding it now.
Because as soon as it gets into the red, it's bad. Because you're going to be clipping your voice. It's not going to be a whole bunch.
Okay. How about now? Well,
what if I just keep talking and talking? Bye.
That's good. I think that's good. Like now, my voice is not.
Well, like if I sing to it, it's going to be a different because I'll be right here.
And it's all the way in.
Yeah. Which is better because, but, I mean, like, Mike should.
Yeah, it's on the at the yellow, but not quite in the red. You want to see what's happening?
Just using this, not using the microphone,
Yeah.
alright? Do I point this side of it too?
It doesn't really matter. I mean, like, he's like...
Because now it's still working.
Yeah, you'll still be getting better. I think it switches.
Okay, this...
Okay, go ahead. Could you talk for a little bit, just to...
Yes. Should I identify myself or just start on the question?
Oh, yeah. Or, I just wanted to make sure that the levels are all good. We're all good.
Today we're not really interviewing per se. We're just kind of, I mean, this is...
We're just talking, just to get to know you, and for you to get to know us.
See what you think about some of the, I mean, the areas that we're thinking about going to.
Yes.
Just like, really, we just want your thoughts on the questions. I mean...
Well, so far, I think they're good questions. I mean, from what I looked over. But I could start, I mean, on the first one. What political and social role does the church play within the African American community of Muncie? I believe the political role is very important because years ago the church was taught to shun away from politics and to be separated. But I'm finding that when you look at the Bible, there were God's people involved in politics. Daniel, for example. Daniel was a statesman as well as a prophet. And God used him. And when the miracles happened in the lives of God's people, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, those Babylonians were able to see the power of God, and they gave him glory and honor. As far as the social role, it's very important too, because there are people with needs. And I believe the church should reach out to those that are hungry, homeless, down and out, abused, whatever. I don't think we should separate ourselves that we're so good or so separated we can't minister to the needs of the people. Now you look at what Jesus did. He reached out to people. And so what about us? You know, there were people who had... the man had a withered hand. There was a man who was blind. There was even the damsel who died. You know, Jesus said, he raised her and he said, give her something to eat. He said, the damsel's not dead. She's just asleep. And so I believe the church has a role to reach out to the community. This, of course, the Afro-American community. Number two, what are the prominent churches within the Muncie's black community? I would say there are some churches that have been here for years. Calvary Baptist celebrated, if no mistake, 150 years. Bethel AME Church has been here for years. And don't quote me on this, it may be the oldest church in Muncie, on West Jackson. Both of those churches, East Jackson. Christ Temple Apostolic Church is another church that's been here for years, and it was built during the Depression. Bishop Oscar Sanders, he came to Muncie from Indianapolis and started the work. In fact, I used to live around the corner from the church, so I know about it. In fact, I lived between his home and the church years ago. That church is still going today. Another church, I would say, Shafford Chapel. It's been going for years. And there was some information given during our dinner as Hurley Goodall spoke. And I can remember during my high school days, Reverend Oliver, his daughter and son were in school at the same time I was. And he would picket Indiana, Michigan, because they didn't have any black employees. And I saw he and Mary Dowlison picketing, but I was taught that we didn't get involved in this. And I wish today I had helped them out. But it was my teaching of small Pentecostal church that we stay away from these things.
Was that the general consensus within the community, or I mean, were more people?
I think at that time a lot of people just didn't get involved.
Mm-hmm.
But that was my position, you know.
Yeah.
So you think that was the teaching of like Pentecostal and holiness churches?
Yes.
To not get involved in politics?
Yes, years ago.
Okay.
Yes, because there were even, we were taught not to vote.
Really?
Just pray for the leaders, yeah.
Wait, not to vote at all?
Right. I mean, not to get involved in politics. The pastor I was saved under, but the next pastor, he said it's all right to vote. And we do vote. But I'm just saying the different ministries and different pastors, yes.
The entire congregation was told not to vote, or just the...
Yes, it was a small church, but this was back in the 60s.
Yeah.
Yes. And so, consequently, with that mindset, we didn't get involved. But now we do. And another thing, going to the first question, the Bible speaks of righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. So, if we don't get spirit-filled or saved people in office, we have to settle for who we got, you know. And in politics, there's a lot of temptations. I've heard sometimes people get in and they do what they want to. They campaign on a certain ticket or position. And so, if a Christian's in, we can, you know, have confidence in what they say. You know, at least we should. So I'm saying that, yes, going back to the churches, Bethel, Christ Temple, Calvary Baptist, Schaefer Chapel, I would say that Mount Calvary, Church of God in Christ, a lot of the churches have been going for years, but some of them are larger, and churches sprung from them. I'll give you another one. It was Maynard's Temple, pastored by Pastor Maynard, and now it's Faith Center, pastored by Pastor Larry Carther. And let me go back to Christ Temple, because so many churches sprang from Christ Temple. I'll give you an example. Emmanuel Temple, when Sister Hunt left Bishop Sanders, she started Emmanuel Pentecostal Church. Now it's Emmanuel Temple. Another church was Greater Grace Apostolic Church. There was a pastor by the name of Howard. He used to pastor there, and he started Greater Grace. Then Pastor Shelby. Now there's Pastor Winburn. It's down on Howard Street. Another church is House of Prayer for All People, pastored by Edith Hutchinson. It's on Hackley, South Hackley. Another church just recently I can't think of the name of it, but Pastor Boyd, right on Centennial off Broadway. And a church that came out of Greater Grace is Pastor Woodgett, Kevin Woodgett. What's the name? I can't think of the name of his church, but I have a list of churches. Let me get a list. As well as I know him in the church, I can't.
What thing?
Now, he did a memorial service a little time. Church of the Living God. Church of the Living God. In other words, what I'm saying that the church that came out of Christ's temple, Greater Grace, and then out of Greater Grace came Church of the Living God. And Faith Center for All Nations, that's Pastor Larry Carter. Incidentally, Pastor Jerry Maynard was a pastor there. He and I were in school at the same time. He attended Ball State. Now he has his doctor's degree. He's pastoring a large church, and I think it's Nashville. Nashville or either Louisville. Nashville. I'm trying to see if some of these, this will help me out.
How many churches are there in Muncie?
I think about 50. Any place from 45 to 50 churches, black Afro-American churches.
So how are churches politically active now? Are churches politically active?
Yes. A lot of them. Some tend to stay to themselves, but they sometimes tend to back a certain candidate.
Oh, really? Like with your church?
Well, our church is not that active, but I do attend the Coalition of Concerned Clergy meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And some years, one of the mayors, he came and spoke to us, and one of the ministers said, well, let's back this candidate. He lost, incidentally.
Gotcha.
Uh-huh.
Did you support anybody in this last election?
I guess I did. I usually vote Democrat, but I like to split my ticket and go by the candidate. But I can't speak for the whole congregation. I don't back a certain candidate and tell the congregation you should vote for him. I don't do that.
Gotcha.
I just encourage them to vote. It's our responsibility, because I remember in the late 50s and 60s, the Freedom Riders in the South, and there was a lot of bloodshed, and because the people were not allowed to vote, and they put them through so much red tape. They had to know, I won't say the whole Constitution, but they had to know a lot, answer questions, and if they couldn't, they weren't allowed to vote. It was made hard for blacks in the South to vote, and those from the North and other areas went down to try to encourage the people to vote. And there was a lot of bloodshed because the people of the South, they weren't ready for change. Some were killed. And so I feel, and I tell our young people, they should vote. With all that some have gone through for these things, and they don't take advantage of it. But that's what I do. I tell them to vote. I don't tell them how to vote, but I tell them to vote.
What was the Coalition for Concerned Clergy?
Coalition of Concerned Clergy. This is a group of black pastors of churches that meet.
Is it all the churches or just?
Well, there's only so many that support. I think it could be for all black churches, but quite natural, like anything else, all are not going to, support it. It's just certain ones. Bishop Milburn's the president. Pastor W.C. Jackson. Incidentally, that's another church I failed to mention. Union Baptist. Union Baptist. That church has been going a long time out there on Macedonia in Whiteley. Antioch. That's another one. Antioch, pastored by Pastor Long. And let me see if I can think of any more while we're on this. I'd like to say Mount Zion, too. Mount Zion Baptist Church. Pastor Jerry Simpson. That's a church we used to attend when I was a little boy. Baptist. But Union, they reach out to the college students. There are a lot of college students attend Union Baptist. In fact, they built a new building right across the street. But I think they have to wait until they, get more finances to be able to move in.
How much of integration is there between the college students and the Muncie residents? do you find many college students go to your church?
Not at the present time, we've had them to attend before. Years ago, there were some African students, about two or three would come, and they were from South Africa, Union of South Africa. And I think she was working on her master's, and she completed her studies and went back home. But yes, there was a young man and this girl. But we haven't had any lately. We'd love to have them, you know.
Do you find university students to be generally active in the community?
Yes, but it's when we have parades, just like the Muncie Black Expo, there's a group of Africans that they get in the parade. Certain events, they come out. During their African festivals or the African Week or festivities, yeah, they come out, and they invite the churches. But I think a lot of it's our fault as pastors that we don't reach out to them like we should. I'll give you an example. There's a Pierre and his wife. I can't think of her name, but we bought some African clothes from them, and we had a family reunion, and on the Friday we were to wear African apparel. So my wife and I bought African clothes, and what that happened, we became friends. Lois.
Yeah.
What was Pierre's wife's name?
Regina.
Regina. Pierre and Regina. And her brother, he's an electrician, and he was able to do some work for us at our church. Victor. But anyhow, see, they're friends of ours, but because of the selling of the African clothes. And her sister would come from time to time and bring clothes. And so we would visit with them. And they're out in the Holloman Village. It's on the west side, but it's off of Wheeling. But I'd say that the churches should be, active in the political arena.
What sort of organizations are there to unite the churches together? Like I noticed that like the Martin Luther King Choir is gathered from several different churches.
Right.
Like, what sort of like institutions exist to bring the churches together? Because the coalition for...
Well, the Coalition of Concerned Clergy, that's actually CCCC. There's 4 C's. I can't think of what that one other C is. Coalition of Concerned Clergy. That's one. The Muncie Black Expo is another.
When is the Black Expo? Isn't that summertime?
Well, they have their activities during the summertime, parade and certain festivities, but no, it's something that's ongoing.
Okay.
There are meetings on a monthly basis, and Dr. Maria, she's one of the professors at Ball State. She's the president of that group. My daughter's the vice. She's with them. I'm involved with them. They needed another member, but I haven't been on the board that long.
What sort of things do they do during the year?
Well, they work on activities for scholarships, and they have fundraiser dinners, and a speaker will come in. And it's for the betterment of the community. It's not just about Afro-Americans or blacks. It's for everybody, really. And I had their bylaws. I used to have a card, and it told what they were about. Here's the purpose. The purpose is to present exposition and programs throughout the city of Muncie depicting achievements, history, accomplishments, culture, and goals and objectives of Black Americans in Muncie and Indiana. Muncie chapter of the Indiana Black Expo will be under the jurisdiction of Indiana Black Expo Incorporated. So it reaches out. I mean, there are things they have. I know down in Indianapolis, they have the a football game between 2 black schools. and they have maybe style shows, jazz. There are areas that reach the church community as well as, you know, the non-church, the unchurched. And it's a big event. I mean, people from other areas.
Circle City Classic?
Yes, the Circle City
Classic. It
Classic.
goes on during, that's in the fall of the year, with
Yes,
football.
September, August.
When I was a freshman, which was last year, it was during our fall break, so that's
All right.
like, when is that, October? September?
October sounds right.
Yeah.
But it's a good outfit. I mean, it's a great organization. Here's something else. Produce films, TV shows, radio shows, books, records, periodicals, brochures, and any and all other kind of materials designed to portray the things itemized in paragraph 1. Well, that's the purpose. Establish scholarships, promote other educational and economic development programs designed to inform and educate the public as to Black Americans' economical, educational, political, religious, and social achievements and cultural developments. So it's a good organization.
Are there any organizations to sort of to unite the black churches and the white church and the predominantly white churches?
Yes, there's the Delaware. Mainly, some of these are to help needy people. I'll give you an example. The Delaware County churches, and what they do is send out letters to the churches, and most of the time there are needs for their pantry. You know, people that are hungry, they have problems with their bills. So this is actually not uniting them, but it's uniting in an effort to help those in need. But the group I'm thinking about is the Citywide Church, and that's pastored by Dr. Saunders. Some years ago, Dr. Saunders and Pastor Willie Jackson got together, and they decided to come together. Now, both of them, at the time, Dr. Saunders pastored the First Baptist Church in Muncie. It's behind the public library. And Pastor Jackson, of course, pastored Union Baptist. And what came out of their coming together was Pastor Jackson preached in a service at the arena out of Ball State. And all the churches were invited to come. Now, I didn't make it to the first service when Pastor Jackson preached, but the next time Pastor Saunders preached, and I went. And it was a real nice experience. And the theme or the picture behind that is that we'll come together as one church, regardless that we have our churches here, but under an umbrella as one church in Muncie. But I don't think that, I understand it's only about 30 churches participating, you know. I think most churches have their own agenda, you know.
Is that still operating?
Yes.
Where do they meet now?
Well, out to the restaurant in the mall.
Is it the cafeteria?
Yeah, MCL cafeteria.
Yeah.
I got a card, and they have meetings from time to time.
Do they still hold
The
live
big-
church services?
Well, no, they only had those two real big services. But I tell you, it was a beautiful experience. What I had to do, I think I shut down our services or allowed somebody to be there. I think I shut the services down. I attended. They had dancers, worship, singers, and the church's combined choir. It was real nice.
When was this? How many years ago?
I think it was about 2 or 3 years ago. I don't remember the date, but I could find out for you at a later date, you know, because I had an article with the first one. Yes, here we go. Unity service brings about 5,000 to University Arena, and this was in it around probably September of 1998. There's an article about the first meeting, and Pastor Jackson, he preached, and the second one, Dr. Saunders, and he's a good speaker too. But he's no longer the pastor at the First Baptist. And sometimes, I don't know, but a congregation doesn't get a hold of the vision that that pastor or leader has. But he's still functioning in the position as a pastor of that church, the citywide church, I'll say.
So do they just occasionally have services like maybe Sunday evening, citywide church, or they just don't do it?
I think basically all they're doing is having meetings.
Okay.
And the information I've gotten is that they have had retreats for full-time pastors to get away at a retreat and to share with one another, to go to MCLs. And I must confess that I haven't been to the meetings, so I really don't. Lord help me, I have to be honest with you. I haven't attended. But I do get the literature. He sends out a card. I'm sure to other churches also. But I think we tend to get involved in our own ministry that we just don't allow time for it. Sometimes we just keep real busy. I'll give you an example. I used to work and pastor, so I guess I was a part-time pastor. Now I'm full-time. And I worked 33 years in Anderson. That's, not too far from Muncie. At General Motors. And we raised 8 children, 5 boys and 3 girls. So consequently, I had to have some money coming in, to raise a family. And my last 4 years, I transferred to Delphi Chassis in Dayton, Ohio. So I ended up with 37 years. And sometimes I would be like this. I just want to come home and rest. I wouldn't be, I have to go to church, to teach or to minister, but other times I just wanted to relax. It was 93 miles from my house to the parking lot in Ohio, and I drove that distance for about a year and a half.
So you drove from Muncie to Ohio?
Mm-hmm. And then I later got an apartment in Ohio, Middletown, Ohio, and it wasn't as bad. It's a little south of Dayton, going towards Cincinnati. But I met a lot of people. It was a learning experience for me. But the reason I went was because of money, I just wasn't making it like I used to here in Anderson. So I had to go to another state.
With this citywide church, how much behind this were the congregations? I mean, was it more the leadership that was involved in it, or were the congregations behind this as well?
I think it's mostly leadership, but you can see from the article, the congregations, they did support those 2 services. I mean, it was a nice crowd in that arena. But it didn't, I didn't see the follow-up on it. It's like they tended to go back in their own congregation and just, sit back and take it easy, so to speak. Or whatever they were doing. Now, I'll tell you another, I don't know. I think those are the prominent churches, but there may be some I'm leaving out too, because let me see if I can think of any more churches, and then we'll try to pick up this thought. There's a lot of the newer churches, but I'm thinking of the older. I'll tell you a church that's real big. A couple of churches I failed to mention. Deliverance Temple, pastored by Royce Mitchell. And they ended up buying the building that was Old Christ Temple. when Pastor Milburn came, it would be fair if I don't mention Deliverance Temple, and I saw another one here. See, as you get older, you forget. You know? See, you're young people, but I tell you, Paramount Community Church, that's another, Pastor Levi. And now, her mother pastored that church, D.M. Levi, and her mom passed away, her dad passed, now she was a missionary in Africa. She pastors. And that church has been going for years, and I mean, radio broadcasts, like 40-some years. They celebrate their anniversary as well as the years they've been on WLBC radio. So, Paramount Community Church, and
how common? How many women pastors are there?
I don't know the exact number, but I can give you the ones I could think of. Pastor Edith Hutchison, she pastors House of Prayer for All People. She's an ex-school teacher. She's written some books. I got a couple of her books. Another pastor, lady pastor, would be, it used to be Pastor Thomas, Sevenfold Ministry. Now, there were two women pastors in there together. But this is the same building that Pastor Boyd's in now, so I don't know what happened. But there are two right there. Sevenfold Ministry, Sevenfold Agape Ministry, and House of Prayer for All People. Pastor Levi on Willard Street, Paramount Community Church. You know what? I can't think of any more. I would have thought there would have been more than three. But it might come to me.
Well, 50 churches too. I mean, 45, 50 churches, that's a lot to sift through.
Yes. And I'll tell you another thing. Let me give you the other church, True Vine Holiness Tabernacle, Pastor Wade Sloss. That's on Willard, and he has a nice congregation, nice size. And Pastor Brian Crooms at he changed the name of that church. Word of Life Christian Church. Word of Life Christian Church. Now, I think those would be the outstanding churches, the black churches.
How small do these congregations get? Like, which church probably has one of the smallest congregations?
The ones I mentioned?
Yeah.
I would say Paramount Community Church and Pastor Edith Hutchison. Those are smaller churches.
The same two churches that have women pastors are
Right.
also some of the two smallest ones?
Yes.
Is there any sort of correlation between them?
I don't really think so. I believe it's just preference.
Gotcha.
Some people would rather go maybe to a holiness church or a Baptist church per se, and I don't think it's any reflection on the women. It may be a little, because some churches don't believe in women preachers. You know, I know when I was coming up, I would talk to different people, and we'd get in discussions. They would say, God didn't call a woman to preach. He just called 12 apostles. They're all men. You know, these things. But I like to look at it this way. In the light of the Word of God, God can send whoever He wants to. If He wants a woman, that's His business. If He wants a man, that's His business. And I don't think we should try to limit God to our manner of thinking, to say, God, don't send a woman. In fact, I guess I'm a little partial too, because I got saved under women's ministry. Sister Hunt, back in 60, June 26, 1960. So, You know, I don't have a problem with women preachers.
Has there been, like in your experience, a woman over a very large congregation?
Not in Muncie, the Muncie area. There are in other cities, Chicago and larger cities.
Mm-hmm.
There are women bishops now,
Mm-hmm.
especially the Methodist Church. They're women. The Methodists, and there are some Pentecostals and some Independents. The women are doing a great work. Look at prophetess Juanita Bynum, Shirley Caesar. She's one. Church of God in Christ. They're doing a great work, especially if they can sing and preach. And you know, I don't have a problem with it. I think some of the old timers would. In fact, some of the churches I've ministered into, they let the women come up front to sing or say something, but they don't normally get in the pulpit. Now they do at our church. We don't have a problem with that. But I've noticed some of them, they did just stay out there. But I think they're changing now. The roles are changing.
What's the connection between music and the church?
Oh, music is it's awesome. You know, it's something different about music. It's like it adds something to the church, especially the worship services. You have somebody give a solo right before the minister comes or the choir sings. It tends to electrify the atmosphere as we praise and worship God. It's something about music. Now, there is a church out here that don't believe in music. They say, well, that was just in the Old Testament. But if they want to believe that way, that's their business. But we have music. You know?
Which church doesn't believe in music?
Well, the Church of Christ.
There's some,
Church of Christ.
Yeah.
And there's a Midtown Church of Christ right on Willard and Hackley in Muncie. Yes.
That's non-instrumental?
Right. They may be changing. Now, I heard on the radio, and they had some music in the background. You know, it's been years ago. But I've talked to people in Church of Christ. They don't. I'll give you another. There's a Fairlawn Church of Christ on Monroe Street, right behind the Family Dollar off of Madison.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a Caucasian. It's not a black congregation. But I've talked to Church of Christ members, and years ago they didn't believe in music, and they would say why. They said, well, that's in the Old Testament where they had music. You don't hear it in the New. But you know, I've been. This is my understanding that the church originally had the dance. You go back to Miriam. She took the tambourine and sang as they crossed the Red Sea, and they rejoiced over the victory that God had gave them. Pharaoh and his host was drowned in the sea, and she sang and played a tambourine. So there's music right there. They danced and played. But the church, the world stole the dance from the church. So that was the church's originally. And you go to Lucifer, he was an archangel, and it's believed he was around the throne of God, and he was in charge of the worship and praise. But he got uplifted in pride. He said, I'm going to exalt my throne above God's. And he came down. And now he's the devil, Satan. And you know, it's music is something about music. It just I find I can enjoy the service better with music than not.
Do you sing?
Do I sing?
Do you ever sing any of those big solos?
No, I would sing a congregational song or just a short song maybe before I minister, but I like to leave that to somebody else. I'll stick with the preaching and teaching.
What's it like in the day-to-day life of a preacher? Like, what's your daily routine like?
It's busy. I like to get up early in the morning and pray around about 5 o'clock, spend some time in prayer and in the Word, mostly prayer. And I go to church and take care of, the mail. And there are things, we have a small congregation, so there are things that I have been doing in the past, shoveling snow, and if we have a light out or some electrical work, I can call an electrician, switch, something's wrong. There are things that I had to do that you would think others should have done. But by being a working preacher, I enjoy working around the church and for the Lord. But we have a brother, another minister, who recently came with us, and he's taking care of a lot of that. He's taking a load off of me. And I did have to take my wife to, I take her to doctor. She had a few health problems a while back. So that took time. So I'm saying it's busy. It's busy, you know. If you put time into it, studying, to teach, for Bible study, to preach. Also, I teach a class on Monday evenings, preparing for that. So it's just busy.
What's the class you teach on Mondays?
It's Women in Ministry in the Church of God in Christ.
What's Women in Ministry?
Women in Ministry, that's women who, those pioneers who were prayer warriors, who reached out to people to feed them, to pray for people, have prayer meetings, to do the work of God. I mean, we haven't got that far into it. Basically, the class is about research. Certain women they have to research material on, and it gives how to write a term paper, and how to gather their material. And actually, it's a fairly new class, but the Lord is helping us. We're learning.
So you don't pastor a Church of God in Christ, do you?
No, I pastor Apostolic Church.
But they're really close, right?
Yes.
Similar
We're both Pentecostals.
Right.
But we fellowship Church of God in Christ. Pastor Lawson, in fact, he called me he sent a letter about ministering at his church. I preached at Pastor Bumpus, Holy Ghost Temple, and Dr. Kirk Shiloh, Church of God in Christ, and they preached at our church. And years ago, we stayed separated, at least in Muncie, but we're coming together. I've preached at Faith Center, and Pastor Carther, he's preached for us, and we're just talking about getting back together.
Is this all the Pentecostal churches, or is this just these two?
No, it's just some of them.
Uh-huh.
I could name more, but that's some of the Pentecostals.
I mean, as far as like coming back together, I guess, like becoming more involved in each other's service. Is that a?
Oh, no, it's not all of them. There's some that are still sort of staying to themselves. But I believe if they were invited to one of the churches, they'd probably go and minister. But the question, would they invite that minister to their church? Sometimes it's one-sided. But what I'm seeing, what's happening in our church, it's mutual. They come to our church, we go to their church. And we're having a good time.
Do congregations like switch around too?
Well, not necessarily switch around,
Does
but
it? I mean, like.
they come. The whole church comes.
Oh, okay.
Right.
To that particular visiting church, we'll go to their church, and then they'll come to ours.
Okay.
Mostly for like evening services, or like you'll have regular service at your church,
Right.
and then evening service if there's something going on, pastor's anniversary or
Yes.
something, you'll go and.
Usually a 4 o'clock service
Right.
in the afternoon, right? And we have good times. There was a church in Anderson, Holy Ghost Temple, but it's an apostolic, and we have a good fellowship. There are others, but we haven't touched bases lately, but we still have a good fellowship going when we get together.
Do you see the same kind of fellowship between like Pentecostal churches and Baptist churches? Like, have you ever been invited to speak at a
Baptist
service together, or?
No, but it's happened. In fact, Christ Temple, Bishop Milburn had Pastor Jackson to speak at his. They had an anniversary type service, and Pastor Jackson, he said this. He said, "Do they know I'm a Baptist?" And he's funny, but he's a good speaker. I may have a flyer. I believe this is. They had me down to pray. Let's see here. Yes, invocation, and the speaker. Let's see, there's Pastor Charlotte Levi. She introduces Pastor Willie Jackson. See, we're coming together. I'll tell you another church, Pastor Winburn, and he's had Pastor Jackson. Now, I can't remember going to a Baptist church to speak, but my aunt, Missionary Dollison, she went to Mount Zion, and she wanted me to go with her, and she spoke at this Baptist church, and she was Pentecostal. And so it's happening, I'd say, more so than it used to be, that the Baptists and the Pentecostals are getting together. And I know in Pastor Jackson's churches there are some Pentecostals. Basically, Pentecostal is speaking in tongues, you know. And that's what usually full gospel, Assemblies of God, Apostolics, Church of God in Christ, Holiness, Church of God of Cleveland Assemblies. These are under the Pentecostal umbrella or movement. But yes, they're coming together. And I tell you another thing, what God is doing, the scripture says He poured out His Spirit on all flesh. And Baptists are receiving this gift. Baptists, Methodists, Catholics, you know. It's happening. These are the last days. So I'm of this belief we may as well get together. If we're going to go to heaven, let's get together now down here.
No, because my aunt, she goes, my mom and my grandma, my aunts, one of my aunts, we go to a Church of God in Christ.
Yes.
And then my other aunt, she goes to a Methodist church. Mm-hmm. And when we go to visit there, it's just like being at our church, except for dress is obviously different, but it's just like being at a Church of God in Christ.
Right. I'll tell you another thing. I spoke at Pastor Bumpus's. He had an anniversary. It was a Friday, and that Sunday, it was a bigger service. They had about maybe 7 churches. Well, it was only 2. And do you know, it was Schaefer Chapel and our church. And his group, Schaefer, their group sang, but Pastor Martell Winburn, he wasn't there. He lives in Richmond, if no mistake. He doesn't live in Muncie, but he pastors Schaefer. Well, we had a good time. So I'm seeing more of that happen. And that was an AME church, African Methodist Episcopal, Schaefer Chapel. And so it's not on a large, real big scale that I'd say it could be, but I see changes where the black churches are coming together.
On the committees like the Coalition of Concerned Clergy, do they kind of help bring together some of these things? I mean, is this like by getting to dialogues at meetings?
Yes. Well, their concern is issues in Muncie. They backed the Dr. Martin Luther King events in January, which will be coming up Monday. Usually they'll get a speaker, and I think it's Pastor Jeffrey Johnson from Eastern Star. And they have a morning service at the bank, and then that evening they have activities at the high school also. Mm-hmm. Another thing they do, just say like in Muncie, there are employees, say at a certain business, and they're being mistreated, and they give their concerns to their employer or the president, and nothing's done. Then they bring it to the Coalition of Concerned Clergy, and it's up to us to act on it, because we want justice, we want fairness, no matter what race it is. And a lot of time it's the minorities, the Afro-Americans are being mistreated, and so that's where the concerned clergy comes in.
So it's more political, where some of these other things are more
Yes.
the religious congregations are getting together for religious services.
Right. It's a political and a social thing,
Okay.
as well as the spiritual, because we do get together on those services. There is a spiritual part they have a play in. Some years ago, there was a Dr. Debbie, I can't think of her last. She was an ex Miss America. She spoke, I think it was either CCC no, Dr. Martin Luther King meeting or a Black Expo. But she used to be Miss America. I can't think of her last name. But she was a good speaker.
How often do they meet?
Once a month.
Once a month?
I think it's second Wednesday of the month or something. Bishop Milburn, he sends a card out to those and reminds them also. He has his secretarial follow-up.
On a coalition, like how often do you guys get involved? Like when was the last time a worker came to you and asked for help in their?
Not a whole lot, but just recently there's a situation coming up that some employees were not being treated fair.
Really?
Yes.
What was the circumstances?
Well, the circumstances were the sanitation workers in the city of Muncie were being mistreated. And what was happening was that they don't have a union, but they do have guidelines in their book. And I guess the foreman or the head, he says, well, I can do it. I can do whatever I want to because that's what I want to do. Rather than going by the book, he'll just do it his way. And one thing was, one of the supervisors was black. And what they were doing was congregating in his office. And it was just like a title, but he didn't have the power to carry out. And they were training other men, and as proportion to the black workers, the blacks weren't, it was just being unfair. Oh, they were really hurt. And they had already tried to get it resolved, and nothing was done. The person they talked to, who could have done something, said, I don't see anything wrong. And so consequently, we're supposed to go to try to get some action done. And it's sad because to see employees who want to do right, all they want is make a living, and others are being able to work overtime and drive around in trucks, maybe not do much at all, and all. It's just unfair. And I don't have the specifics, but I've been in meetings where they told things, and I mean, you could see the hurt on their faces. Yeah.
So what is the coalition going to do? Like,
Well,
what sort of influences do you have?
well, the coalition was going to meet with the person who could do something about it, and along with some of the white ministers too, not just the coalition, but others who were involved. I mean, influential people. Something has to be done. You think about Dr. Martin Luther King, and that's what he was doing. He was looking out for the sanitation workers in Memphis when he was assassinated. You know, he went down to help those trash collectors, and that's when he was assassinated in Memphis. And so I'd say as ministers, if we don't help people in need, well, what are we good for, you know? I think we should speak up for justice as well as preach the gospel. I don't see taking all the time, all of our energy in these events, but we should hear the concerns of people in our city who's been hurt and mistreated and do something about it. It's like a system. See, I've lived in Muncie for years, and I can remember when Muncie, the blacks didn't have good jobs. And that's what Reverend Oliver was doing. He was picketing so that we could be included. And he asked me, he said, where do you work? I said, Warner Gear. And he told me, he said, it was because of him that he went to Warner Gear, the management, so that we could get hired out there. And they called him, he was Muncie's Dr. Martin Luther King. Hurley Goodall mentioned him, in the talk he gave at that dinner we had. 6th of January. He was a good man. And they hired a black at the Indiana Michigan Company. Probably two or three. I was able to see that in my lifetime. And now you have to pay your bills at through the mail or at Marsh Groceries. They don't have an office like they used to years ago. They used to have the gas. You'd have to go pay your gas bill or mail it in. And they had the light company down on High Street. They had the telephone company right across from McDonald's on Madison and I think it's Adams. Adams and all that's changed, you know. But he did a good work for Muncie. And I wasn't aware of this, but he attended Wilberforce College and Payne Theological Seminary over in Ohio. Reverend Oliver. Let me see. Now I could look at some of these other questions.
I mean, as kind of evident now, that's what our main concern is we're going to have so much information. I mean, you know, there's so much.
It is. It's a lot to tell.
Yeah.
And see, we're just probably just touching on the, you know, they said the iceberg, the tip of the iceberg. Yeah. It's so much more.
I mean, this isn't even like a quote unquote interview. I mean, right now we're just talking.
Yes.
You know.
You're right. See, we just got about 4 questions. And we haven't got to the rest of them.
Yeah, and even those questions, I mean, those are just, like we said, not, you know.
Well, what it is now, if we can't get everything today, I'm sure there'll be another time we could meet again to get the rest of them.
Today, like we said, is not necessarily for a strict interview. I mean, today is more just kind of looking over questions, just talking, getting to know each other a little bit.
Yes.
And then,
well, that sounds good. But see, one thing, I've lived in Muncie for years. I wasn't born in Muncie. I was born in Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
That's near Greenwood. If you go down from Memphis, 55 to Greenwood, and around Grenada, and about 12 miles from Greenwood is where I was born. Money, Mississippi. And our parents picked cotton. They were sharecroppers. But what happened, there was a migration of blacks to the north for better jobs, for better schooling, and housing and these things. And so, according to my cousin Ananias, he goes to Antioch, and he said we came to Muncie in 1946, and I started school at Garfield. I attended Garfield Elementary. I went to Wilson for 2 years, and McKinley. See, there's no more McKinley now. It used to be a junior high school. McKinley's gone. Right? You know where the field house is on well, next to the field house there was McKinley Junior High School. It included 7th, 8th, and the 9th grades. And I spent my 9th grade year there, and then I attended Central in 58 through 61. Muncie Central High School. Mm-hmm. Bearcats.
What sort of role did church serve in your life as you were growing up, going through school?
Well,
did you ever have like a falling out with the church?
No. The church was a blessing to me. My mother, I'll tell you about my mother. My mother was going to make sure I attended church. And I thank God for that now. Now, I couldn't see it then. But when we were young, we went to Mount Zion Baptist Church. Pastor Love, Reverend Love was the pastor. And we lived on 2nd Street. If you go 2nd down to Penn and turn left, there was Mount Zion. It was between 1st and 2nd on Penn Street. And there was a Seventh-day Adventist church, Philadelphia. It's on the corner. Well, there was a time that my mother was going to make sure I went to church. Well, for some reason, I ended up going to Christ Temple. I don't know whether I was late to go to Mount Zion, and it was a Pentecostal church at Christ Temple, and I started going there. And some of our friends, their relatives attended there, so it worked out real good. But we moved to Whiteley. See, what we call industry, the area I was raised up was around 1st and 2nd, Hackley and Persian Drive. We call that across town. That's on the southeast side of Muncie. Well, when you go across the bridge to Whiteley, that's the northeast. And that's where most of the blacks live. They either lived in across town or white. and so I started going. I wasn't ready to turn my life over at that time. See, I was real young. I didn't know about salvation. I didn't know about turning my life over to the Lord, getting baptized. But as I got older and I heard the word preached, I knew I was a sinner. I knew that I needed to be saved. And being saved is something that Christ has done for us. It's not something I could work for. But He paid the price by shedding His blood on Calvary. So when I accepted Christ as my Savior and allowed Him to be Lord of my life, I was saved. Now, another thing that happened, I received the baptism of the Holy Spirit. That gave me power to stop doing some of the wrong I was doing. To be honest with you, I haven't always been saved. I haven't always been a minister. I just give an example. I used to lie. I used to steal. I used to smoke marijuana. I remember when I got drunk back in high school, probably 1958 or 9. They had that Wild Irish Rose. Have some wine, that was the thing back then. And you know how youngsters are. We got to try it out, even though we probably taught against it. And it was like the bed was going around and around. And the Bible speaks of this. But I thank God for my experience, because the devil can't tempt me with, he could do it, but I don't want any wine now and get drunk off of it. So I'm just saying, when the Lord came into my life, it changed my life. I wanted to go to church. I wanted to study His Word. And you know what happened? In the process of me studying His Word, praying, and being faithful to church, He called me in ministry. And it was about the same time I started going to Bible college. It's the time that I got my local license in ministry. 1968. I got my local license. And here's something that happened. I used to do the devotional service at the church. I would sing devotions and lead the testimony service. And the Lord's Spirit came down on me, and I began to preach. And I wasn't a preacher. And this was in 60 and I think maybe 61. It happened twice. But I couldn't do it of my own. I just had to sing a song and talk. But you know what I believe? The Lord was allowing me to know that I have a part for you in ministry. And I mean, it was the scriptures just flowed out. I mean, I was preaching. And so this is why I say the church has played a very important role in my life. I mean, my wife that I married, I met her at the church. We've been married 39 years. And this is a generation and an age, there's a lot of divorces. And I understand that the divorce rate in the church is about 55%, or as high as the unchurched. It's about the same. So having a good foundation and a knowledge of God's Word has helped me. And even now, we have a prayer meeting and a Bible study through the week and in our Sunday services. I love going to church. I wouldn't want to be where I couldn't go, And it's just, that's just part of my life. That is my life. And the Greek word for church, ecclesias, it means a congregation or an assembly. A baptized body of believers who've been called out. And so what the Lord did, He called me out of the world and placed me in His body, which is the church. The building is not the church where we worship. That's just the building. The church, we make up the church. All of us, we are the church. We are His body. And so in the Greek, it's a different word for a building. So to answer that question, I love church. I love to be in the service of the Lord. I love to hear testimonies, what God is doing for his people. But going back to Muncie, I've seen a lot of changes in Muncie. Now, a person can live wherever he wants to live in Muncie, If he has a job and he can afford the cars and the homes and the clothes and these things. And that's how it ought to be, So, a lot of people say, I don't like Muncie. Muncie has nothing for me. But I believe it's what are we willing to make out of the time we live in Muncie? I don't see it that way. But Muncie's been good to me. The Lord has blessed me in Muncie. And it's a smaller town. I'd rather raise a family in Muncie than Chicago or New York or Detroit, LA, and some of those places. Even though there's drugs and things to get into in Muncie, but still I'd rather be in Muncie than the larger cities. You don't have the drive-by shootings and stuff as often that you would in those cities. But just feel free. Any questions? As we're getting acquainted, I don't know, where were you from? I know you got up and told your home.
Oh, I'm from Michigan.
Michigan? What part of Michigan?
Near Ann Arbor? In between Ann Arbor and Detroit.
I got an aunt up in Detroit.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Where in Detroit? In Detroit?
On Philadelphia.
Oh, okay, yeah.
My dad's oldest sister lives there. He had one in Flint, and she died. Aunt Kate.
Oh, okay.
And a brother in Pontiac. Now he died.
Yeah.
And my dad and my uncle Lonnie lived here in Muncie. And it's just two aunts left. Aunt Ella Scott, and she lives, if you go out Tillotson, and there's it's like some condos right near Bethel on your left. She lives in that, she and my uncle. Aunt Ella and Uncle Odell Scott, and Aunt Lottie Stewart. That's the only two of my dad's immediate family that are left. See, one of them, his youngest sister got killed. She lived in Albuquerque, and they had a son lived in Tucson. And on their way back in the van, my uncle was driving, and the van turned over and killed him. My Aunt Jimmy, she was a letter writer. She would write letters. She and I would really keep in touch with one another. But when you mentioned Michigan, I got relatives up there. Where are you from?
Piqua, Ohio. It's just north of Dayton. Yes,
some of the people I work with, I know they mentioned Piqua. And there's a Tip City.
Yeah, it's just south of us.
One of the brothers, Gary Blocker, he came down and ministered at our church. He was into prayer. He went to a United Methodist Church up in Tip City.
Okay.
And they invited us to go to a prayer, it was a prayer, a workshop seminar on prayer. And I thought that was nice that they allow us Pentecostals to go up there with the and his pastor, Merle, pastored at Tip City Church. But he got another church in another place, a bigger congregation, and it was closer to his mom. His mom lived there. I want to say around Canton, I'm not sure. There's another place in Ohio. But they got a new minister. But it was nice fellowship. Brother Gary Locker. And by working in Dayton, Vandalia and all of the airport, I got acquainted with Ohio. Now you're from Princeton, right? Mm-hmm. I remember. Isn't there a factory, an auto, one of the Japanese?
Toyota.
What is the name of it?
Toyota,
all right.
That's where the Tundras are made.
Oh.
The trucks, that's where
All right.
the trucks
I know. I remember in some of my studies hearing about Princeton. Mm-hmm. If I work in a factory, there's labor studies, and we get into some of that from time to time. But Princeton, I've heard of that. Princeton.
Actually, can I use your restroom?
Yes, right in there. And if you want something to drink, let's.
Oh, I'm all good.
Huh?
I'm all good.
You're what?
I think I'm perfectly.
Oh, all right. If you're thirsty, we got some punch. I think I saw a Diet Coke in there.
You said you worked at Delphi in Dayton, didn't you?
Yes.
Didn't that just recently close? I think.
I wouldn't doubt it because they were talking about, there were several Delphis.
Mm-hmm.
The one I worked at was UAW. See, they had some IUEs too.
Yeah.
And they didn't get as much as money as UAW did. Here's what I heard. I heard that the company said they were going to shut it down, and so they end up taking less money. But some of the men told me, they said, now they had just built a new plant. They knew they wasn't going to shut it down.
Yeah.
They was just threatening, you know.
Just to get the wages.
But I called Roger, one of the men I used to work with, and just to see what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And he lived a little north of Middletown. He built a new house, and in fact, the apartment I had, he told me he used to live there while he was having a new house built. And I left a voicemail. I didn't get any answer yet, but I just called him last night. But the one I worked at was Delphi Chassis on Wisconsin Boulevard, and they had another plant on Needmore. Those were the two were together, but they had other Delphis, but they weren't UAW. They were another union.
So I think my dad, pretty much the whole family works in factories too. And so we had friends. The factory he worked at was just down the road from the house and didn't move town. So all the guys he used to work with were all over the place.
Yeah.
And I think he said that some of his buddies working down at Delphi Chassis, and it did either really cut back or.
Well, they were talking about it when I was working. When I went to Ohio, they were working 7 days a week, 10 hours a day, 70 hours. All right, and in Anderson, 40 hours was all I was able to get. Now that's good money, 40 hours.
Yeah.
But I was used to the overtime because I worked overtime for 20-some years. You know, when you work Saturdays, in other words, our working day was almost like 6 days, and sometimes 10 hours or 12 hours. Once in a while we would go on 12 hours, then we'll go back to maybe 10 or just 8 hours. But we normally work Saturdays, and so you're able to get some good money, you know, working like that. Well, I had time to retire, but I wasn't ready to retire because I had some financial things to take care of. So that's why I transferred to Ohio. I went to Dayton, and I didn't work the Sundays, but I worked those other days, and it was a blessing. But here's another thing about the church and being, you know, saved. I had some close calls. I would be sleepy sometimes, going home, and I'd remember waking up just in time. It was like I'd be heading towards a car on the highway, and the Lord was with me. You know, I'd wake up just in time, or heading off the road. I could laugh about it now, but it's a bad feeling. I did get in a wreck. Once I was going into work. My daughter had a brand new car. My car didn't start that day. And lo and behold, I was on 75, and they call it Dysfunction Junction. Because the traffic the road would narrow or something, and I wasn't familiar with the road. I'm driving like probably 70 miles an hour. 70 or maybe 75. And all of a sudden the traffic had stopped. And I'm trying to get it stopped. By the time I stopped the car, I barely hit a car. Just barely hit it on the bumper, and 2 trucks hit me behind. And it totaled my daughter's car. I didn't go to work that day. I felt so bad. And so she got another one, you know, and I didn't get hurt. But the policeman said there are a lot of wrecks in that area, and some of them are fatalities. And so I just was blessed. But, you know, when you work with people, you like to see how they were doing. And that's what I like. It's like the men aren't calling me, but I would call them and see how they're doing. I got something I want to give to you, each one of you. They're like a declaration of confidence in God's protection. Derek Prince, he wrote it. He said, what happened? The enemy attacked his wife. And so he wrote this up as you pray, before you go to bed. And it's like, no weapon formed against us shall prosper. I won't read it all. It'll take too much. But I'll just read it to you. Because I don't want to. But I think I got, yes, here they are. I think I got 3 of them. Yes. Let me give them to you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you.
And if you pray that, like when you go to bed, it's a protection. I'll go get you. I got to get 2 more. Have you heard of Derek Prince? He's a scholar, a Rhodes Scholar, and he's British. He talks with an accent. He's getting older now, but he's written books and lessons. He used to come on the radio, Principles, and I got his catalog, but he's good. Derek, and he deals. I've seen him on television. They'd ask questions about the Israel and the Middle East, and he would answer. He's an older man now. I'll get 2 more for you. The Word of God is real. It's life. Now, but any questions you want to know as far as about myself, my work, the church, my family, personal, schooling, feel free to ask, and I'll do the best I can.
What Bible college was it you said you went to?
I attended Crossroads Bible College in Farmland. Now the school is it's shut down. It's no longer going, but what I did is I got a BA in Bible, and then I taught student teaching, and I got a Bachelor of Theology, I got a Master's, and I got a PhD in Religion, and I did some distant schooling from another school. In fact, I'm the academic dean for a school in Ohio, School of Biblical Theology, Dr. Isaiah Acock. He's an ex-Catholic priest, and he told my wife and I he wanted to get married, so he got out of the church, and got him a wife. He's a little funny. But he was in the Korean War. And he called me a few days ago. I sent him something. Here's something else I want to share with you. Actually, what it is, it's like your pastor, to send them off, pastor and wife. See, when my wife she said that you wanted to come and just get acquainted with me, so I got a few things. I got some resources. In other words, I thought I'd be prepared. But this is like for your pastor. There are 3 pages, and it cost about $350 that the congregation or the trustee board or the elder board can send their pastor and wife off. I think it's just a night or 2. A lot of times pastors are so busy, and it's good to get away. Some of them are getting burnt out and all this.
That's kind of 70% of pastors do not have someone they would consider a close friend.
Right. Yeah, sometimes it's lonely because people don't understand, and
You're a person as well.
they now on the back of this page there's the dates. On the one with the worthy of double honor, it shows the upcoming, they call it Galatians 6:6 retreats. Now I'm going to be honest with you, I've never been on one, but I heard it's real good. It should be another page. I don't think. Let me see that one that I gave you, the second.
I think you wrote the second.
Oh, no, well that's not right. I messed up. Here, take, do you have this one? No, you don't have that one. There's the other one. All right.
So what is the pastor's social role?
Social role? Well, we should be involved in some things. I mean, some things we wouldn't want to be involved, but support the community. Sometimes things cost a lot. We can't go to everything.
Yeah.
But whatever. I think the pastor should be. Did you get this one?
Yes.
I have given her two. No, that's a different one. See, I think it's some testimonies. What people are saying about it. Did you get this one?
Yeah. Wait, no,
sir. The head is saying.
Yeah.
All right. But it's like pastors are human. We have feelings and we get hungry and we get tired. Like, I cut the grass. My daughter talked about getting me a riding mower. I said, no, that'll give me some exercise. And see, we got a front, on the side, and in the back. And it's a nice amount. But I like it. It gives me a chance to get out there and get a workout. I was getting some walking early in the morning. I parked my car down by the river, West Side Park, and I'd walk down and back so far. But I'm gonna be honest with you, I haven't done that lately. I'll show you a picture of mine. When I attended school, Central, see, that's what the high school looked like. You know where the Ball Corporation on High Street is?
Yeah.
That's where Central High School used to be, across from United High Street
Yeah.
Methodist Church.
Where the Star Press is.
Right, there you go. Well, that's where the old Central was. They tore the building down. And across, and where that's my, what my diploma looked like. Actually, it folded up, but that's just a copy of it. And I'm going to see if I can find the certificate for my Crossroads. The minister that came he had his things sewed together, and I thought I'm going to do that, and that's why I put these in this folder like this. But I'm not completed. I just started putting them in. I got my birth certificate and some more things. But let me find you something about Crossroads. And I like going to school over there. Farmland is about 15 miles from here. You know where farmland is?
Yeah. I do it on the way home, actually.
Right. You go. Or if you go 32, you'll come to Selma and Parker City, and then Highway 1, and you're at farmland. Make a right. You're right there. Well, that's where it is. It's not very far. But Dr. Shockman was president. There's one of the. Have it all together, but I can give you some. I did some. Let's see. These are the transcripts as well as the degree, so I'm trying to get them all separated here. Plus, I was able to go to vocational school that I've said right there. Okay. Over at Anderson on my job, and I was able to get a journeyman card too on the machinist and tool and die trade.
My grandpa worked there.
Is that right?
Yeah, he did the drafting of them.
Is that right?
Yeah, he just went to vocational school, learn how to do the graphic. Because you used to be able to do that, just go and learn how to draw them.
He was in design, sounds like.
Yeah, he got out right when it started going computerized. And then
Yeah, they have, anymore what they do is program them, computerize, and all that stuff.
My grandpa did that.
I got something on Dr. Aycock also. I'm going to let you read. Have you heard of Sam Abram? Sam?
Yeah.
He's my cousin. He used to be over at Muncie Community Schools. Now he's over the county.
Wait, he was the superintendent?
Yes, he was superintendent at Muncie Community Schools.
Yeah.
Fine person, Sam.
You guys are cousins?
Mm-hmm. His dad was my Uncle Lonnie, and Renzie, I'm named after my dad. There's some more in there. I'm trying to see.
Standard certificate of live birth and stuff.
of life.
Of live birth. So I wonder if there's another one if you did.
I'm pretty sure that's it. My sister worked for a Chicago hospital where she would take pictures of all the babies, and they would record them no matter what happened.
See, when I was born, we had a midwife. I wasn't born in the hospital. In fact, I got a brother-in-law, Lonnie. He said his mother, she had a baby and bled because the blacks weren't allowed to go to the hospital.
Really?
Yeah, she bled to death.
And how come there are midwives these days?
What?
Are there many? Do you know?
They still get them.
They still have them, but I don't know as far as percentage. This is a thing look like coming into prominence. And it used to
You
be.
can get them to come to like the hospital though. You don't have to do it at your house.
Gotcha.
Like the midwife can actually come to the hospital and deliver your baby, and then.
Gotcha.
Some of them, I've heard some women want to have their babies at home, or the father delivering in a different family setting than just in the hospital. Well, you know what? We had ours in the hospital because I didn't know anything about that. And I wasn't going to try to do the doctor's job.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That was
Great. One of my great aunts over there. I think she delivered my grandmother's babies.
There's some cards that I got. One of them's a journeyman card, and the trade I'm in. So I really had two jobs. I had in pastor as well as in the factory.
What does it mean by journeyman?
A journeyman status
Is that like above apprentice or?
right. It's two ways. An apprentice, you can go on two. An apprentice is 4 year. He goes to school as well as take his courses, and then there's so many hours he has to spend on machinery and working with dyes or electrician, whatever he's in. It could be a journeyman electrician, a tool and die maker, a tool maker, sheet metal man. 4 years, then he gets his graduation. Or 8 years. EIT, that's an employee and trainee, he can get it in 8 years. There's two ways, but that's a journeyman. You have to get your time in, your hours to get your card.
Gotcha.
But once you're a journeyman, you get, you're entitled to get more money, and it goes with you. Once you're a journeyman, you're always a journeyman.
Gotcha.
But see, I'm retired, so my days with that is over. But God is good to me, and I can say He's blessed me. That's why I say the church is so important in my life. But any questions you think of, you just let me know, and I'll try to answer.
Yeah.
But I thought I'd get some of the things out and just share with you. But let's see. What type of church services are available? Well, in the church, there's prayer meetings. Most churches usually have a prayer meeting. There's Bible study. We have our Bible study. There are some for new beginners, new converts classes. There are services of baptismal. Somebody want to be baptized. And that's usually not just a special service, but after the service or at a certain time. There's sometimes conventions. Churches will have conventions where they invite other churches, or a person have problems, they need special prayer. Now this is not a service, sir. It's a service of ministry, but not a special service of the church. It's like a pastor and his wife will minister with people who are having problems. Sometimes people have financial problems. Sometimes they have a sickness or death. Somebody passes away. And we have to be available.
Has that changed since, as far as the different types of services? Like when you were younger, did they have other services, or has it been fairly consistent over the years?
Fairly consistent. Revivals, we have revival meetings. In fact, we had a revival about 2 weeks ago, just 3 nights. We had a good time.
What's attendance like at these different services?
Well, usually revival and council or convention, there are more people. But I'm finding that the attendance could be better. A lot of times, other churches, they have something going on at the same time, and they can't come, or they may be involved with something else. I think a church or a saved person looks at this, well, I'm already saved. I don't need to go to revival, That's for the unsaved. But sometimes we can get revived, And revival starts with us. When we pray and get in the Word and seek God, and we want and ask for revival, well, we can expect it. At least a portion of it. But I will say what happened back the turn of the century, in about 1890 or 1899, or the latter part of the 19th century, there's what we call the awakening of whales. People were praying and seeking God. And I had a book and I read about this account. And you know what happened? The taverns closed down. The worldly amusements. People got saved and they stopped going to taverns. They stopped. And about the same time in the United States is when the Azusa Street revival took place. There was a building they called Nell's Folly, and Parham was the teacher. And Seymour, they tell me now, Seymour was a black man. Because of segregation, he had to stay out in the hallway. He couldn't go in. But he heard the teaching, and the Parham went somewhere, but he left an assignment. How did they get the Holy Ghost or the Holy Spirit in the book of Acts? And the answer was they laid hands on the believers and they received the Holy Ghost through speaking in tongues. And so they did this with a student in Topeka, Kansas. And this girl did it. And that was sort of like the beginning of the revival in this country. Well, in 1906, Seymour and others got together, and I mean, miracles happened, signs and wonders. I got a video that tells about it. And they said that they came to see this building. Somebody said, the building's on fire. And the firemen came, and Seymour said, this building's not on fire. And when they looked up, they saw flames shooting up on top of the building. But it didn't burn anything. It was like Moses, when he saw the burning bush. And I say that to say that that's when the Pentecostal movement started in the United States. They tell me it lasted for about three and a half years. Just revival out there in California. And so, but here's another thing they said happened. There was no difference in gender. The men and women, everybody just were in there worshiping together. And the races came together. Even though this was a time of segregation, that the blacks and whites came together in that service. And it had a humble beginning too. And from that is where the Church of God in Christ, Bishop Mason, Bishop G.T. Hayward and the Apostolics, the Full Gospel, the Assemblies of God, they all came out of sort of that movement, you know. But some of your other churches stayed the same, you know, like the Baptists, the Methodists. But I forget how I got on that. But that's how. Sometimes I'm teaching at our church, and I said, "How did I get on that? How did I get on that subject?"
But so you said at that point, like, whites and blacks were going to the same services?
Yes, and now 1906, Azusa Street. I'll tell you, there was a Bishop Pearson, Bishop Pearson, I think. Let's see. He would have it every year. Carlton Pearson, that's right. He would have the Azusa Street meeting. His church, if no mistake, is in Tulsa, Oklahoma. How does the church attempt to recruit and retain members? Well, through the media, we advertise our services, and also the phone book. Our order of services are in there, plus often through the radio, television. On, I think it's channel 42 or 43, you see a lot of the services of the churches listed, you know, the local churches. And this is not just black, but it's any church that wants to be on. Now, ours is not on there, but it's in the book. Sometimes in the newspaper, and I'm going to say, we've talked about it, witnessing, going from door to door, but we really haven't done much of this. It's been a long time since we've got out and witnessed. But this is another way, pass out tracts and witness. Actually, I'm of the belief that deal with the unsaved. I don't like the idea of trying to get other people's members, you know. And this has been a situation that's happened down through the years. Some members will change. For whatever reason, they'll go to another church. They're already saved, but they'll change the church. And a lot of times they won't stay. They'll move from one church to the next. But I'd like to see them come off the streets unchurched and get saved and stay in a church, a good word church. And the way we retain members, give them something to do. Keep them busy. Give them the word. And counsel with them, pray with them when they have problems. Show love, as Jesus did. And we do all we can, and hopefully they'll stay. Sometimes you can do all you can, and they, for whatever reason, some maybe stop coming to church. You see them once in a great while and these things. Why do people attend church? One thing the Bible tells us to attend. In the book of Hebrews 10:25 it says, "Not forsaking the assembling of yourselves together, as the manner of some is, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as you see the day approaching." In other words, as we see Christ's coming, drawing near, we're supposed to go to church, and even do it more often. And we get strength from believers. We encourage one another. We go to learn the Word. See, the spirit man needs some food, just like the natural. Our spirit needs some food, and that's the Word of God. You know, we're fed the Word. Sometimes a person wants to get married. Well, they'll get a minister. They want a church wedding, so they'll go to church for that. To get a date for a wedding.
Do you think reasons for attending church are different? Like from when you were growing up, I mean, did people go to church for different reasons? I mean, was there maybe more of a social aspect or more of a, this or that?
I think basically it's the same, but see, when I went years ago, basically it was because I had to. My parents were over me, and I had to go because they were over me. And it was more respect for authority and parental guidance than I see today. I'll give you an example now. We raised our children in the church, took them to church, and they knew that we were going to church. That's part of our life. But our daughters are real faithful to the church, but our sons, they hit and miss. I'm just, I can talk about my own family. But, and I think that's a situation with others. I've heard some people say, well, my mother made me go to church. I was forced. I don't want any of it now. I've had enough church. They rebel. In other words, they figure they've had too much of it. But the reason I went, because I had to go, and then after I went so long, I enjoyed going, and I don't want to be where I can't go to church. I look forward to going to church now.
Like, if you were to take a guess, how much of the African American Muncie community does attend church?
I guess well, I would say a large percentage, but there's also a large percentage that don't go. I think it's those who've been brought up in the church, and there are some who haven't been disciplined to go, and I think they sort of fall by the wayside. And then there's some who used to go, they drift away. It would be hard to say. I would have to, get some statistics. There are probably surveys and that I'd have to find out, do some research. I couldn't really tell you, but what I'm finding that the churches we normally go to, the attendance doesn't seem to be that much.
Is it less than it used to be?
I think so. I think it's less. I think some of it is because there's so many small churches. We've divided ourselves. You got maybe you got so many little churches that you didn't have years ago. Just like Christ Temple, with all the churches came out of Christ Temple, and you think that if those churches didn't exist, and all those members were yet still at Christ Temple, but I feel that God called them to start a work. At least some of them. I don't know. That's something they'd have to know themselves. But I think that's part of it. There's so many churches, and a lot of people have moved away from Muncie too. The industries, the economy is not like it used to be in this area, especially Anderson, Muncie area. And I think a lot of our young people, to get good jobs, they move away. They'll finish their education and they'll leave. So it's hard to say, but that's something that you could consider. Are there non-Christian religious groups within the Muncie black community? Non-Christian religious groups? Well, yes. Yes, there are religious, the Muslims. I'm sure out on the campus there are some of the religious groups at Ball State. And I'm not sure if are these the types that you refer to?
Yeah, I mean,
non-Christian religious.
Or Islamic, Jewish.
Yes, all right. And
within the African American community of Muncie, are there these groups also present, or is it solely Christianity?
Oh no, there are others. Just like you mentioned the Jewish, right on Jackson Street is Temple Bethel. There's a Jewish temple. There are other groups, and I'm not real familiar with with Ball State, but I'm sure there are others because they get people all over the world.
Are there members of the black community involved with the synagogue or the?
Oh, I see. No, I don't think so. I don't think there's a lot of black community members involved in those. I think they're pretty much sticking with Christianity.
Okay.
Yes. How often and in what manner do different congregations interact with each other within the Afro-American and majority community? I would say that it's happening often, but the ones that are doing it are yet doing it, and those that aren't pretty much stay with their own organization or own denomination, church affiliation. But I will say it's more than it used to be. Yes, we're coming together more so than we used to. Where do the ministers come from? Are they local or do they come from towns outside of Delaware County? Well, some are local and some came from another city. I'll give you an example. Let me find my list of churches here. Bethel AME, for example, Pastor Harris, Barbara Harris is the pastor there, and she, if no mistake, is from Evansville. Or she, I think, told me she used to pastor, or she's from the Evansville area. Ambassadors of Christ. I think Pastor Slaughter is some from another area. I don't remember him growing up in Muncie. Antioch Baptist, Pastor Long is local. He's from Muncie. I've known him for years, and the Long family. Berea Apostolic, that's our church. Well, I would say I'm local. Muncie's my home. And at Bethel AME, I've already touched on her. Bethel Baptist Church, Pastor J.D. Hill, he's been in Muncie for years. He used to pastor Mount Zion Baptist. In fact, he was pastoring there before Pastor Jerry Simpson. But he left Mount Zion and started Bethel Baptist. Calvary Baptist, Pastor J.E. Moorhead, he's from another area. They used to have a pastor by the name of, he was a polished minister, a good speaker. Anyhow, he was from Michigan and he went back to Michigan. And so the pastor they have now is from another area. Pastor Adrian Lavelle, to my knowledge, he's a local. He used to be with the Terrestrial Temple Church of God in Christ, Superintendent Lawson, but he founded Cathedral of Praise on the south side of Muncie. Christ Temple, Pastor Milburn is from Battle Creek, Michigan. He's from up in Michigan. He was assistant pastor to a big church. Pastor Fuller. I was trying to think of the name of the pastor from, by the time I got to my wife, it came to me. Thank you, Holy Ghost. Thank you, Holy Spirit. Pastor Fuller used to pastor Calvary, but they have Pastor Moorhead now. I got Cathedral of Praise, Christ Temple, Church of the Living God, Pastor Kevin Widget. He's a local minister. And I think a lot of the students, I think he gets some of those Ball State students. And he's in a lot of music. He's a singer. He's a good preacher too. And when you have a praise team and singing, and I mean, people like that.
You need it.
I did, but Pastor Fuller, I wanted you to ask his name, Calvary. But by the time I got in there, it came to me.
Oh, okay.
Pastor Fuller. Thank you. Deliverance Temple, Pastor Royce Mitchell, he's a local minister. In fact, Pastor Mitchell, I had some old track team pictures, and he looked like a little boy. I was in the 9th grade, he was in the 8th, and he was so small. Now, he's nice size now. But Bishop Clark used to be the pastor. And what Bishop Clark did, he pastored in Fort Wayne and Muncie, and eventually he gave the church to Pastor Mitchell. And now he pastors Wings of Deliverance in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and also a church in Ohio. I want to say Salina or up around that area. He told my wife and I every other Sunday he'll go to the one in Ohio. But Pastor Mitchell is local. Pastor Carther, he's local. I've known him for years. We were like in elementary school about the same time. Pastor Winburn, he's local. That's Greater Grace Apostolic. I remember when he was born. And we knew, my wife and I knew his mom. Good Samaritan, Pastor Willie Seals, he's been here for years. I don't know if he was born originally in Muncie, but Pastor Samuel Burris, I think he's from another area, but I'm not sure. I don't remember him growing up. Pastor Bumpus, he was in school with my younger brother. I've known him for years. He's local. House of Prayer, Pastor Eve Hutchison. She's from Indianapolis, but she attended Ball State, and she ended up living in Muncie and teaching. And so I guess she's like Muncie, but she came from Indianapolis. Kirby Avenue, Pastor Stanton. I think he's from another area. His wife is Dr. Greenwood's, Dr. Teresa Greenwood's sister, and the other Dr. Greenwood, Charles Greenwood, they're related. Midtown Church of Christ, Pastor Dwight Robinson. I don't really know. I would think he's local, but I don't know. Mount Calvary Church of God in Christ, Pastor Cody he's local. Pastor Jesse Branson, Mount Olive Church of God, he's local. Mount Zion, Pastor Jerry Simpson, he's from another area. New Hope, Pastor Edwards, he's local. Pastor Levi, she's local. Most of them are local that I see.
It sounds like the majority of them are. I mean, is that, being a minister, is that a advantage? I mean, just being able to tap in, like, to the community, kind of knowing the people already before you start?
I think it helps. It helps, but I don't think it's a big advantage. If a speaker's good, he's got a good delivery, and he comes to a church that's a fairly big church, I don't think it matters. Now, Pastor Jackson, for example, he's not local, but he's a dynamic speaker, and he pastors a thriving church, a big church. Mm-hmm. So I don't think the local has anything to do with it. I think a lot of it is a particular church, religious affiliation, and also the minister. A lot of people, they like Union. Union's been here for years. And Pastor Jackson, he's involved in a lot of things. I know a while back they had some computer classes. They had an intercessory prayer, and they dealt with the school children, like elementary, junior high, and high school. And the head of the school system was there. And also Dr. Abram, he was there. Mary Dollison. There were a lot of teachers there. And so I'm saying it's good to reach out. If you have a good format and you got people in your church who can reach, and you can really have some, not that they're all going to be members of the church, but they can have things going where, there's a lot of activity going on. Let's see. What's the next one here? How often do the church congregations from Whiteley and industry interact?
So let me kind of preface this one. We were just like listening to people talk and kind of reading about the history. The people were talking about there's a rivalry between Whiteley and industry, and this question was just kind of does the rivalry not then? I mean, like, is church one of those things that kind of transcends the rivalry, where people,
Yes, I would say because now that's no problem. Like our church is on the south side, and Dr. Kirk's is on Whiteley, and we fellowship. There was another church we don't fellowship like we used to in Whiteley. So that really, I don't think the distance would matter. It's just if you have two pastors who are friends and who believe in fellowship, we just get together. It could be on the same side of town, or it could be in Whiteley. That really doesn't matter. I know we even fellowship with churches from Indianapolis and Anderson too. Gary, Indiana. We have fellowship with a few churches up there too. I think some pastors are closer than others. Just like students, going to Ball State, there are some students you're closer to. Maybe you're in the same curriculum or the same field, educational field, or maybe you like the personalities. And I think it's one of these things. I'll give you an example. The pastor in Anderson, he worked in Plant 3 and I worked in Plant 7. Well, 7 was right beside 3, and I'd go over and talk to him. My job, I was like a mold maker, or in the mold maker trade, and sometimes I'd have to go and check out things, and I'd go over and talk to him. Another thing, the nurse was over there, and I'd go get my blood pressure checked just to get over it. That would give me a good reason to get out of 7 to get to 3. And I talked to him. And he and I could relate. We were both working, and we both, had churches, and we were just good friends. And I think that's why we're so close. He calls me his preacher, and I call him my preacher. And his name is John Stewart, Holy Ghost Temple. And now he's retired. I'm retired. And we just have a good time. And I feel closer to him than most of the ministers in Muncie. And I think that's because we work for the same company. But I still love the brethren here in the city. I don't have anything against it. But there's some people you're just closer to than others. What factors are typically considered when choosing a church? What is the importance of family ties to the congregations? Well, I really I can answer it the best way I would think would be right. I would think it's churches they've been brought up in, or churches they have family members in and friends, or it may be some music they like, or the pastor, the way he preaches, or the location. It's just some people are looking for certain things in churches. Now my experience was as I remember in school, I didn't have a lot of clothes and all this, so because my mind was going to Antioch. But I heard they dressed nice, and I didn't have all that. So the Lord led me to that little storefront church. And that's where I went. It was a little humble place. And I was comfortable there. And so I don't have to have the big buildings, the big crowds, as long as I'm doing, and I think most of my ministry is in teaching, pastor teaching. So I think that's a thing that you almost have to have a survey and find out why would brother so-and-so go to this church? Why would sister so-and-so go to this church, And how do ministers go about preparing sermons? Well, I don't know how others, but my experience, I like to pray and ask the Lord what he wants me to preach. And I get a thought as I'm studying his word, and then I will work on that. I'll give you an example. I was led to preach on there's a time and a season, in Ecclesiastes, the 3rd chapter, a time to be born, a time to die. And I got up early this morning, and I was able to get some more information. I read it, and that's what I'm planning to preach. It's something that's needful also, because there are so many people in the black community. We've had a lot of funerals here in Muncie. I had a cousin, Sylvester Holt, passed away, and there was one of the members, at least she attends our church, Dora, lost an aunt in a fire. We went to her services. Bishop Smith had a member down in Indianapolis, Evangelist Bennett. She passed away. We went down there, and there was another funeral about the same time. Oh, Brother Dixon at Bethel A&E, Pastor Harris. And I mean, that church was packed. They had to put chairs out in the aisle. But we went to that one. Well, he used to be one of our neighbors. If you go up Brotherton to Willard, and turn right about half a block, he lived up on the hill. Well, he passed away. They said he had heart surgery, and I guess he died during surgery or after. But we know the family. And I'm thinking, and sometimes people don't understand why. And there's a lot of hurt, there's a lot of pain. But there's a time to die. There's a time to be born. And I think the scripture's emphasizing that we should spend time serving the Lord because life is so short. And the preacher said it's vanity and vexation of the spirit. He tried this, he tried that. And he said all is vain. That was Solomon. So this is what I've been studying and working on to preach on Sunday. And I can't speak for everybody, but I in homiletics, the emphasis is placed on starting your sermon the following Monday. So you'll have all week to work on that sermon. Well, it doesn't always come that way with me. But, all right.